Hello, my name is Marc from jazzguitarlessons.net and welcome to April 5th, 2017, office hours for members. Of course, we have unlimited members now, standards member, core members, we have private students, so welcome joining the community. I'm doing this single-handedly, spent the whole day alone, so you have to forgive me if I trip in my words. I'm totally in French mode in my mind. So it's 5 o'clock. In fact, it's not even 5 o'clock yet, and as we say, early is on time, and on time is late. So let's get started with, sorry, there's cat here in the picture, I see. That's Mitten, my beautiful cat. She's losing, she has long hair, right? So office hours, as you know, are part of your membership, the community building on jazzguitarlessons.net. You are invited to ask questions during the live webinar, and I will post a question here live from the YouTube page. Well, I print out, please ask a question here. Whoops. It posts? Yes. Sorry about that. Please ask questions here. So I cannot answer to all questions at once because I can't supervise. I can't look at all the questions. However, I receive great questions by email, and we'll have follow-up talks. Sorry, moving my microphone here. Follow-up talks with questions by Alan, by Dean, by Michael, and a few philosophical thoughts I want to share, in video lessons, but I want to take the time today to kind of address it because you're members. I want to make this more not just community-based, but like kind of fireside, candlelight type of interview thing. So feel free to post questions. I'll do my best to juggle questions as well as, run the webinar. So I'll check a few times during the webinar if we have upcoming questions. Be careful. The box on YouTube only allows you for 200 characters or something. So if you have longer questions, please feel free to post them on an email, and I can, either tackle them during the week. Sorry, my throat is a bit sore. Or alternatively, you can wait until next week and say, could you talk about this next week? Because, right, so I'm doing this on my own. If you are commenting on Jazz Guitar Store from your student account, I cannot see it live yet. We will get to those comments later. So the place to be, if you want to comment on this now live with me, if you're watching this live, is the YouTube page. All right. Of course, office hours are made for members, and I typically prepare a bunch of questions that you ask by email. I sent you, I hope you received it, by the way. I sent you an email about 24 hours ago to go like, hey, can you make it? If you can't make it, just send me an email and I can shoot the shit and do this, and you can rewatch it live. We have monthly webinars too. The follow-up one is around mid-month with your host, Nathan, our fabulous in-house virtuoso player. I'm just trying to catch up with him. Basically, is what I'm doing here. So don't miss office hours and webinars and other special events on our Facebook members-only page that you can also see. That's kind of new. So we're working, we're still in process of establishing all the moving pieces, putting this together. So thanks for your patience, and let's dig in. Alan wrote us last week, if you watch the office hours, asking about when you get a song with a chord that is a triad, like a G. In this case, it's a G. It's not a G major 7, it's not a G6, it's not a G anything. How could you approach it? And my answer was simply, well, go for these bar shapes. Sorry, guys. Go for these bar shapes that you learn when you learn strumming guitar. So that's an E shape, you have your A shape, you have your D shape that you will learn and try a bar higher like this. This works, but now we have a follow-up question because Alan said, hey, Mark, this comes from I'm Confessing That I Love You, which is a song I've played a few times. I'm not super familiar with it, but I have a lead sheet for it in G. And he states that his bandmate gave him a lead sheet, and the chords are 2 beats each. You have G, plain G, F7, so half step down, but 7, not triad 7, F7, and E7, which is pretty typical of the era, right? So the song goes, something like that. So I have a few ideas I want to share with you guys and Alan, just to, even if you're not practicing this stuff, it's great knowledge, great things to know about songs. First things first, lead sheets. Lead sheets are not always the greatest way to picture a song. And sometimes some chords could be replaced with one another because so you really have to listen to a recording of the song and really have to decide with your bandmates, okay, what should we do with that? It's not because it's written in ink that it's really set in stone. So Alan, I believe your the chords you sent me, so G 2 beats, F sharp 7 2 beats, F7 2 beats, E7 2 beats, are for bars 3 and 4, I believe, because the lead sheet I have, it has an E7 at the end of bar 4, so I'll just assume this. So there's a few options. My first, so lead sheets was my first thought. Lead sheets are bad. They're not bad, but just you have to know what you're doing. Secondly, is it depends how modern you want to go. So I had prepared 3 ways you could approach this situation by order of crunchiness, of modernness. So yeah, sorry about the picture. It's kind of weird. We have a really white day. It's really cloudy, and I have this soft box on my right, but I have this natural, like, hot, warm light bulb above my head. I had a comment, a visitor student say, you know, it should be warmer. Don't use these white fluorescent lights for your studio because it makes it more cold. So I wanted to make it more inviting. Thank you for the suggestion, by the way. So the image might look weird, but at least, you know, you can still see the guitar and listen and play. See, the image came back to be kind of wider when I move around, so I'm sorry. It's not my fault. I'm not assuming responsibility for the image quality on this one. So Alan, go back to G7 and stuff. So one of the things you want to think about is whenever there's a chord that is the one chord, so the song is in G and your chord is G, you are totally allowed to play another brand of G, especially if you choose a G6 like this guy, or even a G6 like this, or a G6 like this. You're allowed to do this to replace your 1 because we know it's a tonality. We know it's a key of the moment. And you can also use a G major 7, G major 9, 6, 9, so G major 7, goes without saying, G 6, 9, and G major 9, or here. We'll talk about this one later. So feel free to do that, especially if you're not responsible for comping the melody. So here's one way I could play at the beginning of the song, personally. So it's a D7 sharp 5. I'll just do D sharp 5, not to be too cumbersome. So I'd go. I'm really not a finger stylist, for the record. I'm just doing this to demonstrate. So see what I've done? I kind of exaggerated that half step down motion. That would be the most folky, old school way of approaching these chords. You know, you just do this. It's kind of corny. That's what, if you want to be super on top and kind of, you're playing duo with a singer and you make it super obvious for everybody what you're doing. That'd be option 1. Another option would be to go, hey, I'm playing with a bass player. So you do. Here. I think we have a comment. Do we have a comment? Hold on, sorry. I'll look for your questions. No questions so far. Sorry. I have these pop-up notifications that go off at random times, even if I've already seen the message, or I don't know if you get those on your computer. It's kind of strange. So anyways, you start with a G major 9. That's in guitarist language, 10, 9, 11, 10, 10, 9, 11, 12. G major 9 grip, or G6, 9, which would be 10, 9, 9, 10. And you just go down to a F sharp 9 shape, F9 shape, and then you can even use your open E with an E9 shape. That's the least crunchy version. It's more crunchy than going. Something like that. But still, it's very root-based. So if you want to go Lenny Breau or Ed Bickert on this stuff, you could even use a G major 7 like this. So 10, 9, 7, 7, 7, or even go Ted Green and go have these things. Or if you do the lower version, I'll have a few options I can show you, Alan. So one of the ways is depending how much time you have to get down. But I'll show you another option, which is very interesting. Check this out. You know this chord shape? This is F sharp 13. F13, E13. So you keep the shape. But say you bar it in such a way that you also have your F sharp on top here, but not on the bottom. This F sharp 13, no biggie, right? So G major, F sharp 13, F13, E13, all chromatic. Transpose this here. Sorry. There you go. So what you have here is you have an F sharp, but you're not playing the F sharp root, you're just playing this tritone, this guy. So the chord is 7, 8, 8, 7. That's F sharp 13 with the F sharp on top. Half step down, half step down. So let's do this again. 1, 2, good, 3, 4. Pretty modern because you don't have any roots in there. It would be the same as doing, but you're doing it on the second set of string, which is deeper and richer on the guitar if you don't have to take care of the roots. And last option, I'm sorry if I'm running through these things fast. I want to answer other questions. So if you go for more open strings, but with a more modern sound, you have a G chord that's cowboy. But what if you just pluck the three middle strings, strings 2, 3, and 1, and use an A here? That's also Ted Green territory. It's a triad with a ninth. You change one note, so it's like a sus triad. So you go. I'll avoid like naming all of these chords, but you can go a long way by using the simplest chord at first, and then really putting a lot of meat around your dominant chord. Anyway, I don't know if it makes sense, but you can start to dig into all the chords you know and figure out options and choose your favorite, and have 2 or 3 that you stick to that you really like, maybe one for the head in and one for the solos or something like that. Anyways, we'll have to move on to other questions, and let me know if that follows up on your questions. And please, if you have a minute, sorry about that. If you have a minute, Alan, my desk is full of junk. Sorry, guys. If you have a minute, Alan, you can send me the lead sheet. I can look it over and perhaps pencil it in red and kind of go, this good, this not good, or whatever. Another thing you might want to consider, as I said, is you build your options and you say, this is what I'm going to do. And you build yourself a chord study that you stick to, which is rewarding. It's like writing a solo down that's not really improvised, but you learn a lot in the process, which is a thing I've done a lot and suggested a lot through the website. Next question from Michael. You drop 2 chords. That's right. So Michael, I'll just read out the question first. No, let me see if we have questions on YouTube first. Sorry. No questions so far. Good. So Michael says, enjoying the courses. Thank you, Michael. Question regarding chords. How do you decide when to use drop 2 versus other chords? Do you blend the different voicings, and how do you decide? Thanks. I hope to make it to the chat. So Michael, I hope you're watching, or at least watching later on. I use everything. Personally, there's no situation where I'll be, okay, this song requires drop 2s. So just a little recall about drop 2s. Drop 2s are chords that are, let's say, I don't know how to say that. They start with a 5th. So if you look at this guy, it's a C major 7. If you want to write C major 7 in theory, you would write C, E, G, B, but the order here is C, G. It starts with a 5th, right? C, G, B, E. What happens with the guitar is that drop 2s are really practical because they are on 4 consecutive strings. All inversions of drop 2s are also on 4 consecutive strings. So it makes it very practical for, you've seen Wes, fly on the top strings. Most of the time, this will be drop 2 stuff with notes added. So I would use an accompanying drop twos and drop threes mostly if you're a beginner. Let me show you another example of drop three. This is a drop three. And drop threes are this guy, or people will play it like this or whatever. So drop threes are chords with a string skip. So you go G, and you have a string skip and have the three other notes on top. So drop twos and drop threes are very practical and very common because you can keep your roots on the two bottom strings. Plus, if you examine drop twos and drop threes, you can just eliminate one note and just keep your shell. I'm a big fan of using shells and teaching shells because if all your chords knowledge starts from shells, third and sevenths, it's really easy to remove the root. It's an afterthought, and then you can add your extensions on top strings. You can do that. So I always blend different voicings, and it will be dependent on the situation. It's not like one size fits all. So even in chord melody, same concept applies. But if I want to go, there's different gears I could be on, so I can demonstrate a little bit. So yeah, let's do that. What should we do? Autumn leaves? We always do autumn. Okay, so this autumn leaves at 104, and I'll go through different chord shapes and chord voicings to show you what could be useful, and I'll try to simplify it and go by order of crunchiness. Once again, keep the more modern stuff towards the end. So here we go with drop twos for about 8 or 16 bars, and I'll call it a 1, a 2. Still drop twos. Drop threes now. See, the fact is I'm jumping a lot if I stick to drop threes. Now for the next part, I'll mix drop twos and drop threes. Ready? 4. Drop 3, drop 2, drop 3, drop 3, D, D, drop 3, drop 2, drop 3, drop 2. See, I think I've answered my own question. So here we go. We have this idea where if you have a chord progression that's alternating rather strictly in the cycle of fourths, you can alternate between using a drop 2 and a drop 3 will make it to be the closest voicing available. Now that would be an example of just comping with the regular shapes and not going for inversion. So if I had a B flat major 7, it was this, right? E flat major 7 was this. I'm playing Autumn Leaves in G minor, by the way, which is the one you can find in Tune of the Month Club on the website. Cannonball version also, so G minor. So these things, they just happen. However, if I were to try and fly on the top strings, quote unquote, I could stick to playing just drop twos. I'll speed it up a little bit and show you something. So here's a whole bunch of drop twos with extension and things you'd likely hear me play for real. A 1, 2, 3. About that. So you see, you can really use these chords and learn inversions to make interesting little melody passes. So this will often happen that I will stick to just playing drop twos a lot and playing on a lot of inversions of drop twos. So there's a course on the website called Drop Two is the New Black. That's by one of my instructors, my own teachers, Greg. And it's like, okay, now you know drop twos. Let's learn all inversions. Let's learn how to add ninths or other extensions to these chords, and then see how it works on the 2/5, how we can make it even more modern by using different shapes. So it's a great place to be if you want to be a modern comper. So Michael, to conclude my answer, if you're comping basic and you still have root notes at the bottom to maintain, I would alternate between drop 2 and drop 3s with roots on the 5th and 6th string. If you're going for this more advanced brand of top string noodling, flying around, then you could stick to just drop 2. It's a great place to be. Also, all these chords that are not they're not typically found when you take a drop 2 and go through the scale with that same chord. It's not necessarily there. So that's where I would start to recommend the Barry Galbraith comping book. It's volume 3, green cover. I teach it to everybody. I've been through it. My teachers then forced it on me, and then I forced it onto you guys for the past few years. Great book, because you find it's not dogmatic in the sense that you find shapes that this guy, jazz guitar legend Barry Galbraith, used for real. So their comping studies are really well written. Can get it on Amazon. It's about $10. Really worth it. So yeah, in fact, don't take the jazzguitarlessons.net courses. Just buy this Barry Galbraith book and just shed it until your fingers bleed, and then you won't need me anymore. You won't need a teacher. So yeah, the Barry Galbraith stuff is good because you'll find a drop 2 besides another chord that has no name, besides a drop 3, besides a little chromatic pass, besides a perfect voice leading, besides a walking bass for a little while. It's like really contextual and really real life playing. So Michael, I hope it answers your question. Sip of water. Next question is from Dean. And before I'll look at the chat window if we have any questions from visitors. No questions so far. Feel free to ask your questions on the YouTube page. Questions, once again, from the store page. You will have to wait until at least tomorrow until we can get to them. Probably Nathan will get back to you on that. So Dean's asking about playing bass, playing really good bass lines. And I'll read his questions out loud. So occasionally I have to pick up a bass and play instead of guitar. I learned to play bass as a folk musician, so I only do the basic thumb style. Can you recommend any YouTube course that would help me with walking bass lines? Yes, Dean, great question. And there's a thing, I was playing with one of my favorite guitarists in Montreal, J.S., look him up, J.S. Williams. J.S. Williams, great guy, great player. Plays a lot of pop music too, but he has this ES 335. It's all banged up, and we went to the same school. We had the same teachers, and he's a bit older than me. Holy, serious player. Deep timing, phrasing, nuance, very connected to the other players. Very interesting guy. I took a few lessons from him even. And JS and I started to play Stella by Starlight in one of my lessons. I would pay him, of course, but he would start playing, and then I'd start doing a walking bass on Stella, and he stopped, look at me, look, even if you become a great guy at walking bass line on the guitar, you'll never be even half as good as a real bass player. So that's when I kind of stopped. I still do it for fun, but when you're really playing, you should really learn from bass player if you are playing bass. So that's why I don't know of any YouTube clips that you could watch. The thumb style that you're referring to is probably like this 1/5. 1/5. How many bassists does it take to change a light bulb? 1, 5, 1, 5, right? That's the old joke. So it's a great place to be. However, the jazz guys will probably start you the same way, to play 1/5/1 and then go with chromatics going in or scale tone up. And I have a book here. I've never played bass properly, but the name is Todd Kuhlman. Todd Kuhlman. I think it's on Abersold Publishing, and I think it's just called The Bottom Line or The Bass Line. It's so obvious and so well written. It's a small bass method. It doesn't tell you about using upright bass, arco, or whatever. It tells you what notes to play, and it's really interesting in how to build decent bass lines for blues, for standards, and how to be able to kind of target the tone and play nice, but still be in that jazz zone. So Dean, I hope it answers your question. There's just, I'm not a bass player, basically, that's what I'm saying. If you really want to play bass on a high level, just listen to Gary Peacock, my own opinion. Gary Peacock played with Keith Jarrett forever, played with Miles, played with everybody, and he's 80-something, still around, still kicking. Seen him live. It's just the best possible creative output of a jazz bass player that from this era. Anyways, there's always the Ray Browns and all the Mingus and all these guys. And I'm missing a lot of bass players because I'm not one, but Ron Carter, right? John Petitucci, which is more recent too. Get all these guys to listen to, but Gary Peacock is a case in point for this deliberate artistic tangents on standard songs. I'll take just a minute because I don't have any more questions to tackle, but I want to point out a thing or two about the tune of the month for this month. Someday My Prince Will Come. So this April 2017, people ask about how to interpret. And first, I'll see if we have any questions. Sorry, it's come a little habit here. Okay, no questions. So we have B flat major 7. The song goes na dee da dee da da. So I just want to look at the first 4 bars and kind of make sense out of them for you, and you can rewatch this and think about it. So the tune is in B flat. So the first chord is B flat. Then the next note is B flat, but the chord is a D7 sharp 5 to accommodate for the melody. Typically, the D7 is the dominant chord to G minor. So the chord right after the D7 is not a G minor. It goes la dee da dee da da. It goes to an E flat major 7, which means that D7 is effectively a kind of secondary dominant from 7 going up to. Here's what I think that people should do, especially when they look at that E flat note, the E flat chord, 3rd bar, and they go la dee da da. Then this is an E flat chord, and it becomes a Lydian chord. This is a long stretch, rather. So people will start to think of the E flat major 7 as a G minor. So really, as if the G minor is the first inversion. So listen how this sounds: B flat, D7, G minor, G7 sharp 5. So I really like to think of these bars this way. It's a reharmonization I've done myself, which is B flat, D, G, B diminished 7. So this is a substitute for G. So go. It's a bit different. And also the other option is to completely reharmonize the D7, do a tritone sub, and have an A flat 13 instead. So dee da dee da da. Once again, B flat major, A flat 7, G minor, B diminished 7. One last time. 1, 2, 3, da, okay. Ba da 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 dee da da. So that's it. Just a little tangent. I do this with my students, and I call this chord porn, if you want. It's just a way to see the same things in a different way, because if you think about D7 in the 2nd bar, it should be the dominant to some sort of G chord. We don't have a G chord, but we can say, well, G would be first inversion of V flat major 7, hence. And plus we have a G7 coming up later. So that's it for the song. I'll just take a minute or two to discuss something else I wanted to discuss in vlogs and do lessons about, but since this is a more intimate setting, I want to talk about the philosophy of dogma, and sometimes the way we want to compartmentalize, make compartments out of the guitar and the way we're learning. And this is problematic, because I think people will lock themselves up and paint themselves in a corner, literally, with their technique. So I always related the story I related to a story of a private student I had in Montreal a long time ago, and I showed him a process for a comping, a song, and style. I don't even remember what, doesn't matter at this point. But I remember this guy being really serious and going, no, 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 no. When I learn something, I take it, I do this with it, I do this, I do that, and then I'm ready to apply it. And I remember pointing it out. It's like, well, how is it serving you so far? How is this working out? And the answer was, well, not very well. So I'm like, well, maybe it's not what you're learning that the problem is. The problem is how you approach it, and that you insist that it goes through the same grinder, the same mental process. Like, no, I must do this or else I won't be able to learn it. So I think you have to be available, mentally aware that you might be doing this on a conscious or subconscious level, that you might be sabotaging yourself without knowing it, and that's a case of dogma, and that's a case of extreme, going to an extreme to solve an issue. And I did some reading recently, and a really interesting book that so there's a swear word even in the title, but it's interesting because it relates to different philosophies and even spiritual schools, such as Buddhism, and it's called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. It's really interesting because it's very vulgar. He swears all the time, but you could clean it out and just kind of read it as if when he's talking about not giving an F, he's talking about not investing time or thoughts or energy or anger into something. Anyways, I read that, and what he says, what he pretends, and I think he's right in claiming this because I've seen it happen over time, over and over, that when you're attempting to go to a certain degree to avoid something, you will get closer to it by trying to avoid it. Let me explain. My father is a perfectionist. I think perfectionist is this word, and I'm kind of an obsessive guy too, right? For learning music and doing a website and all, and sitting here and talking to myself in an empty room and knowing that maybe somehow people will listen to it later. No offense if you're watching this live, of course. So my dad is obsessive compulsive perfectionist, and he's trying to make everything perfect all the time. Say, the issue is when doing so, he's in and of itself removing himself from the perfection. You see what I'm saying? He's trying to make everything perfect, but the fact that he's trying to make everything perfect makes everything not perfect. First, because he's screwing up on some level, and secondly, because the standard is so high that it's unattainable. So let me give you an example with the guitar before I let you go. I didn't want to run too much over time, but this is a really fascinating topic for me. So say you look at scale positions, which are crucial. I know my scale positions, so should you. You should learn the cage system. You should shed it in A flat and C sharp. You should know that stuff. However, I have students that believe that guys like Wes Montgomery or Joe Pass were good because they stuck to the positions, at which they didn't stick to positions. For the record, watch videos. They don't. You can't replicate a Wes Montgomery solo by sticking to one position. You simply can't. So I had students in the past go, well, I really want to burn and shred like Wes, so I have to stick everything in positions. Why? Well, because when you do so, you solve the note's location issue, meaning that you don't need to second guess where that note is. The position system means that everything is always in only one position at a time, right? But by doing so, by sticking to something that's very dogmatic, then you just create the problem that you're trying to get away from. You can't phrase the Wes Montgomery solo properly or your own lines because you're sticking to positions. So the reason you stuck to positions in the first place is destroying its own purpose. Like, you can't achieve what you're trying to do by sticking to it. However, if you learn your position thoroughly and go, okay, I know them, here's when to use them, when not to use them, and here's the pass where I have to get out of position, I can't make it perfect. So you see, if you try to get a perfect Wes Montgomery solo in position, you will defeat the purpose of learning a Wes Montgomery solo in the first place, because you'll never be able to play like that at the tempos and the phrasing that he's doing it at. So I don't know if that was clear, but it's an interesting thought. And just to go a bit further in that vein, in the book I've read recently, life sucks sometimes. Like we suck, I suck sometimes, and that's okay. It's fine to suck a lot because life is pretty much average. I mean, life is consists of hours passing by. You go in the shower, you brush your teeth, you go to work, you have supper with your kids, and then it's coming back over again. We have these moments of glory that are few and far between, and it's just life is average, and we should be aware of it and be fine with it. So even if we sit down with the guitar, and I'm thinking about my generation, especially where we have this huge, everyone, I guess, but we have this huge emphasis on performance and standing out because we're sold that we need to be exceptional, that everyone deserves to be very exceptional, says Oprah on TV, right? And you're like, well, if everyone's exceptional, then no one is, right? So it's a difficult psychological challenge for a lot of us. And we have to say, I suck and it's totally fine. However, I suck less today than I sucked yesterday, or maybe not if I have a bad day. But point being, we always have problems, musical life problems. The only thing happening is that we get better problems. So the author in the book I'm reading states, Warren Buffett has money problems. Elon Musk has money problems. I have money problems, but they have better money problems than I have. So Elon Musk was so invested in Elon Musk, founder of PayPal, right? One of the youngest, if not the youngest billionaire in history, co-founder of PayPal, SpaceX, so private company doing space exploration and such. Tesla Motors, that's him. So this guy was so invested in companies that he had to borrow money from his friends for rent. So he has money problems. Billionaire guy. I have money problems. He just has better money problems than I am. So we have this Pat Metheny speech in closing that he probably received a Grammy Award or something. And he said, if there's one thing I learned from playing guitar all these 40 years and touring and recording, is that I really need to go home and practice now. That was his quote. It's a direct quote from Pat. I'm like, wow, okay. So he has fingering issues. I have fingering issues. You have fingering issues. You have comping problems and such. Just Pat has issues too. He has these problems. He has better problems than we do. Can play a zillion notes an hour on any form and it still always sounds awesome. But see, it's not all or nothing. We'll just exchange our current problem for better problems in the same areas. On that note, thank you for watching the office hours, the weekly office hours for jazzguitarlessons.net. Improve your jazz guitar playing with a real teacher. Members only. Thank you for joining us. Please send us your questions by email for next week, which would be Tuesday or Wednesday, depending. I'll send an email prior. As always, it's a pleasure to have you on board. If you're curious about what we offer in memberships, please go to jazzguitarlessons.net/memberships, plural, so you can see the different options, what's included, what's not included. Please join our official Facebook group, which I'll give you the URL right away. I should really do that because we have a fancy... Okay, facebook.com, ready for this? /groups/members.jazzguitarlessons.net. Once again, facebook.com/groups/members.jazzguitarlessons.net. This is for people that are part of the core membership, standards membership, unlimited membership, or Tune of the Month Club, along with private students, of course. So please feel free to join us there. We are really tight. We filter people. If you're not a member, you won't be able to be in. So we know that when you're talking to people, you're only talking to the community that really is in with us, and we're collaborating. So I'll see you there. And take care. Have a nice rest of the week, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.